HIMS.
Welcome to the HIMS video on a tour of the BrailleSense U2. We're going to start our tour by looking at the top of the BrailleSense U2. At the back of the top, in the center, is an LCD display. This display can show printing from the BrailleSense U2, and the print can either face the user or the print can be flipped to face someone sitting across a table. On either side of the LCD display are the stereo speakers. Below the stereo speakers, and taking up most of the room on the top panel, is the Perkins style Braille keyboard, with backspace being to the far left and enter being to the far right, and the spacebar being slightly below the keyboard in the middle below dots 1 and 4. On either side of the spacebar, you have two function keys. These function keys from the left are labeled function keys 1, 2, then you have the spacebar, function key 3, and function key 4. These are rectangular keys with ridges along the bottom so that you can tell when you're pressing the function key. Function key 1 takes you to the start menu. You will always hear File Manager after you've pressed function key 1.
File Manager F.
Function key 2 works like an Alt key. When you are in Programs or anywhere that you will find menus on the BrailleSense U2, you can press function key 2 and it works like an Alt key on your computer. Function key 3 works as a Tab key. You can also use space plus function key 3 for Shift Tab. Function key 4 works as an escape. Below the function keys, you have the Braille display, the scroll buttons, and the cursor router buttons. The cursor router buttons are above each Braille cell on the Braille display. The cursor router buttons are oval in shape, and when they are pressed, they move the cursor to your finger so that the cursor is directly on the Braille cell that is beneath the cursor router. The scroll buttons are on the left and on the right end of the Braille display. The scroll button on the top or towards the rear of the BrailleSense moves the display backwards. The scroll button closest to the user or towards the front of the unit moves the Braille display forward. By default, the left and right scroll buttons move by Braille display width. These settings can be changed in the Options menu. We're now going to look at the back of the BrailleSense U2. On the very far left, you have a reset button. The reset button is surrounded by a circle and is an indentation in the middle. You can press the reset button with your finger. To the right of the reset button is an Ethernet LAN port. This port is used for hooking the BrailleSense up to the internet with a wired Ethernet connection. Moving further to the right of the Ethernet port is a USB port. This USB port is one of 3 USB ports on the BrailleSense U2 that are used as USB host ports. We also have a USB mini client port that we will be getting to later on. To the right of the USB host port is a VGA monitor out port. This port is used for hooking up a monitor to the BrailleSense so that a visual person can see what's going on the BrailleSense. We're now moving to the right side of the BrailleSense U2. Moving down from the back on the right hand side, there's a 3-position switch that has a very noticeable ridge in the middle and a dot right above it on the BrailleSense U2. When this switch is pressed all the way towards the back, all keys are unlocked on the BrailleSense U2. When the switch is moved towards the middle,
Top panel locked. File Manager F.
the top keys are locked on the BrailleSense so that the front keys would still work, but the top keys would not. When this key is pressed all the way to the front,
All keys locked. File Manager F.
all keys are locked on the BrailleSense U2. so that pressing any key is going to result in nothing happening. As a result of that, I'm going to put the switch back towards the rear of the unit where all of my keys are unlocked.
Unlocked. File manager F.
Moving towards the front along the right hand edge next to the lock switch is the power adapter port. It is round, and the only thing that will fit into that port is the power adapter. Continuing to move towards the front, and the last thing on the right hand side of the BrailleSense U2 is the USB Mini client port. This port is used when connecting the BrailleSense U2 to your computer to use the BrailleSense as a Braille display or to synchronize data between your computer and the BrailleSense U2. We are now going to look at the left-hand side of the BrailleSense U2. Moving your finger from the back to the front of the left-hand side of the BrailleSense U2, you first come to the Secure Digital Card slot. This slot is used to insert a secure digital card into the BrailleSense. Next to the Secure Digital Card slot, and moving towards the front, you have two USB host ports on the BrailleSense. These can be used to put flash drives into the BrailleSense, to connect the BrailleSense to printers, or for other functions. We are now going to look at the front of the BrailleSense U2. Are the letters GPS, letting you know that you have a GPS receiver built in the BrailleSense U2. Continuing to move along the front, we have the microphone and headset ports in that order, moving from left to right. Next to the headset port, we have a three-way switch that can control what other buttons on the front of the BrailleSense do. When this switch is all the way to the left,
Radio mode.
the media buttons on the front of the BrailleSense work with the FM radio. When the switch is in the middle,
Daisy mode.
the media buttons on the front of the BrailleSense work with the Daisy book reader in the U2. And when this switch is all the way to the right,
Media mode.
the media buttons will work with the media player on the U2. And if we're talking about the media buttons, they must be next, and they are. Each media button has a different shape. The rewind button is a triangle pointing to the left. Next to the rewind button is a circle, which is the record button. Next to the record button is a square button with a dot on it, which is the stop button. To the right of the stop button is a long button, which is the play button. And to the right of the play button is a fast forward button, which is a triangle pointing towards the right. So the rewind button sort of looks like an arrow pointing to the left, and the fast forward button looks like an arrow pointing to the right. And finally, all the way to the right is the on-off switch. The on-off switch is a soft power switch so that when you push it to the right and release it, the BrailleSense is turned on, and when you press that switch to the right and release it again, the BrailleSense is turned off. One thing we did not cover on the back of the BrailleSense that we should cover, that is actually on the back/bottom of the BrailleSense, is the battery. The battery is a user replaceable battery and can be taken out if you so desire. To find the latch to release the battery, put your finger on the right rear edge of the BrailleSense, move it to the left until you come to an elongated rectangle, and then move your finger down until you come to a rough triangle. That triangle is actually a switch. You can push that switch to the right and then pull the battery out of the rear of the BrailleSense. And I'm going to put the battery back into my BrailleSense so that I can turn it on and use it after this video.